This is a little bit of a pivot from wood. We're now transitioning into tech. You guys are getting a little bit of a taste of a presentation that I did a couple months ago. I did a keynote and it was very long, so this is a very short version of it. So traditionally I have very much ad hoc done my presentations, and this I have it a little bit more formally prepared. So I'm going to get into a little bit of like storytelling and then how we start to conceptualize a lot of the problems in the tech space, especially out of these large corporations, specifically Uber, but you can easily transfer that over to the organizations such as Google and Apple and things of that nature. So a man by the name of Bradford Washburn grew up on the East Coast, running, hiking, and climbing mountains in the presidential ranges of New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. Washburn was not only a stout climber from an early age, but a man entranced by the landscapes he wanted to conquer. By 16, he made a guidebook called The Trails and Peaks of the Presidential Range, consisting of maps, local trails, climbs, and hikes. Washburn went on to bag multiple first ascents at age 18, linking up with Nat Geo in his early 20s, and ultimately living a life planning large exploratory mapping expeditions to passionate voids on the map that he was curious about. As a means to shaping the story, the map was a central instrument, fixation, and wonder to the career of Washburn. His stories were fueled by photography, and his photography fueled by the ability to depict landscapes in ways unimaginable at the time. Culminating a chunk of 15 years, 200 plus geographers, geologists, pilots, dog mushers, and more, Washburn went on to publish a new map of Mount McKinley. His work propelled them not only to the blanks on the map, but to those places that have been mapped time and time again. Drafting a large team, he organized the heart of the Grand Canyon in 1978. He claimed every map up until then wasn't adequate enough for the grandeur of the Grand Canyon. Washburn became an expert at creating a vision of the world that he wanted to see. He went on to organize a multitude of efforts, including the 1988 shaded relief map of Everest, that some to this day call the epitome of mountain cartography. Washburn was a pioneer. He walked into literal cartographic voids with a vision and knowledge that only a team of experts could collectively build a map of epic proportions. Interestingly enough, despite all of the physical voids more or less known about, we live in a time where maps are being used more now than ever before in history. It's Washburn's pioneering spirit of a vision for a product larger than any one individual that manifests its way for the future of mapping. Oh, buzzkill.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were...
How do we get this to work?
Mirror your display.
Dude, you guys should have told me sooner. You're missing all the goods.
Sorry. Thank you for putting it... I thought you were telling a story. And we were...
Well, it was definitely animated with some rad graphics, but
I had to drag mine over off screen in a second.
all right. So if we just mirror this, all right. So then let me just rip through these so you get a little idea of what that was about. So this is some sick old video that I found of people climbing Mount McKinley. Okay, super old, awesome archive footage. This is the Grand Canyon. Okay, don't lose me. This is Everest, the map that Alex was talking about earlier today. This is Brad in his heyday, stud. He unfortunately passed away. All right, we're back. Okay. It's Washburn's pioneering spirit of a vision for a product larger than any one individual that manifests its way for the future of mapping. A future that is redefining what cartography at scale is capable of, where some of the most groundbreaking cartography is rarely seen by the public, where the map is happening in real time, and where skills as a cartographer are no longer being called cartography. Where building a map may require you to be a metaphorical dog musher one day, or the researcher the next. As fast as maps were coming to the web was also coming closer to us. The phones in our pockets steadily became more powerful than the computers in our homes. The technology within the phone, the cameras, the GPS, accelerometers, etc., suddenly sparked geospatial innovations that grew to define the location tech that we know of today. The systems that started to define my life, that life of the cord-cutting, 140-character millennial, who's always connected, started to not only creep into my life, but it slowly started to creep in the lives of my parents' generation, And not long after that, even my grandma's generation was pinned to a map. The cartography and geospatial tech that I was trained in and was applying to the world seemed distant from the world that I individually operated within. While walking into a Safeway store and picking up a magazine or passing through an airport with someone reading your map is cool in its own way, my attention was shifting to a realm in which you didn't draw in the attention with your story, your map, or your analysis, but one in which the map was invisible to those using it, naturally woven into the lives of our everyday. That invisible nature of how much the blue dot has changed our lives has extended beyond the obvious impact Google Maps has had, largely to a point where most of us don't know how we operated in a world without it. The revolution of the blue dot has done more than revolutionize the ability for us to navigate. It's dramatically changed how things are navigated to us. I'm talking about logistics. I'm talking about logistics on a scale that, having even worked in this reality for quite some time, is hard to grasp, and a scale that Washburn probably would have loved to organize a team around. Cartography has evolved with the blue dot to a point where the modern form of beautiful cartography, in my eyes, has been freed from the page of a magazine, off the screen of your computer, and landed in front of you in the form of a package you ordered online yesterday, the restaurant recommendation for tonight, or the ad for hiking boots showing up since you went on a hike yesterday. It's the combination of multidisciplinary thinking to solve an innately geographic problem, and it's the underlying premise on how you can call a car with the touch of a button here in Tacoma, Washington, just as someone in Rome, Sydney, Mumbai, or Sao Paulo is simultaneously doing the same. To me, Uber represents one of the largest geospatial challenges in the world, on par, if not exceeding that of the Amazons, Googles, or Apples. As Kirk Goldsberry, cartographer turned CTO of the Spurs, says, countless other domains are facing huge challenges. Many of these challenges cannot be overcome without individuals that know how to handle spatial data. The challenges that Uber ignites as an opportunity, however, is not one of traditional cartography, but filled with the domains not akin to the geographic problems and underpinnings of academia. It's a void that's unrecognizable to most as a field of mapping, one that isn't easily understood, and one that isn't normally talked about in the same cartographic forums or conference tracks. Think of Uber for a second. You see the app, you interact with it, determine where you're going, and maybe check in with it to see how close you are. Now zoom out a bit. The trip you're taking is only one of 17 million trips happening every day. Compared to US domestic air travel, that's 5 times more people flying on an airplane in the United States every day. Over the course of the company's history, we've hit a collective 5 billion trips in 2017 and doubled that by July of 2018 to hit 10 billion trips. When you see our app, you see a few hints to the spatial challenges that we experience right off the bat. You see a map, which itself consists of the tiles that are being served to markets of varying bandwidth, the design and cartography of the map itself, the icons that sit on top of it, and if you have a keen enough eye, you'll notice that you're seeing a Google-based map, a layer that does a little other than look pretty. You see cute little cars moving around. Those are just an anonymized version of the physical cars that are actually close to you. You see destination predictions, an algorithmic personalization that tries to surface the most likely place you're heading based on the trips you've previously taken. If you move through what we call the trip flow, you'll start to see search, powered and ranked by our own spatial search results. As you request a trip, you'll see estimated times of arrival, you'll see matching and routing algorithms, and you'll see fare estimates. Predictions is a complex algorithm taking into account where your blue dot is, where you've recently been, and based on your patterns, where you're likely to go at that specific point in time. Search is a behemoth on its own. How do you store and surface all the correct locations for all the places that people want to go? How do you collect and update that information so that someone isn't pissed when they can't find their favorite restaurant? Your ETA and fares are created by taking your pickup and drop-off information, matching it to an insanely accurate underlying road network, and then calculating your distance for fares and historical trip averages. At the same time, the accuracy of pickup is its own swath of challenges. Depending where you are, your GPS is likely bouncing off all the buildings nearby, which doesn't make it easy to figure out where you are. Determining where you're actually standing is actually one of the largest complexities we're tackling for accurate pickups. Yet we do have some pretty shape-shifty math to get it pretty damn dialed. Additionally, navigation, which is a whole topic in itself on its own. Uber has engineered its own navigation platform so that drivers can stay in-app, hands on the wheel, and focused on driving. The amount of effort in creating a wholly in-house navigation app is the real work of 400 plus people. Some entirely working on icons, others literally on just the camera that follows throughout the entire driver experience. Others working on voice navigation. How do you think all this data is collected? These are systems that needed to get spun up. These tools needed to be created, processes established, and not only honed, but scaled so that the collection could be running in our largest markets, cities, and even blocks. This in itself took an entire geospatial team to determine in the first place. Where do we begin? What areas do we even care about? And which should we focus on first? We can not only determine the busiest places that Uber operates at a city level, but we can do it to the street level by time of day and everywhere in between. With that information, we can create more features and visions of experiences. Essentially, we're building maps data with other maps data. The amount of money invested in custom map tools and custom data visualizations at Uber will literally blow your mind. While it could also excite you, the map expert, given free rein on the ability to create tools, metrics, visions, and experiences and habits for spatial problems that have never been created before, for problems that have never been solved, or problems that have yet to even exist. In order to facilitate our vision of cartographic perfection, we have a massive data science and research team. A study we did last year revolved around the various markets we operate within and how varied geographies think about destination setting. While we, here in the United States, use addresses, and our database of addresses is pretty comprehensive, what happens in markets without addresses? Or where people actually don't know or use their addresses? We went to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, for instance, and found that addressing isn't popular at all. How would someone without an address not only tell you where they're going, but how would they tell us how to get home? How do we flex our geospatial understanding to an anthropological understanding in markets that have a varied, yet very entrenched cognitive perception at the sense of place? Here in Tacoma, you may orient yourself to the side of town, maybe to the water. In New York, to the borough. In San Francisco, you associate with your neighborhood. Understanding the niche dynamics of our markets is crucial to unlocking new business opportunities and new markets themselves. If people don't know what to address, or if people don't use addresses, why even show them? What type of data helps a user understand with confidence that the Starbucks or market that they've chosen is in fact the correct location? You'll see the manifestation of this thinking in features like Save a Place and Set a Pin on the map. You'll also see this in the app we launched for emerging markets in India and Sao Paulo, called Uber Lite, where we successfully abstracted all of the maps data in order to remove the map entirely. Herein lies where I believe the future of mapping is going. We not only care about getting you to the correct destination, but we care about what happens at that pickup and at that destination. Your expectation is that you're dropped off at the front door. How do you know where the front door is at for every building in the world? And what defines the actual front of a building? While I speak to our primary rides businesses and those complexities, Uber owns Jump, the electric dockless bike and scooter company. We have Uber Freight and Uber Eats, and we also have Uber ATG, our autonomous division. We have Uber Elevate, which is our flying car group, and we have even more in the pipeline that I can't actually get into. Each of these verticals has its own share of geospatial problems that haven't been solved for, and are in need of stellar people like you to help out. Each one of these verticals have a niche mapping complexity, and since it's all under one hood, you also have macro complexities tying all those systems together for things like multimodal transportation, which is a super trendy topic right now. In the bike space, how do you most effectively rebalance all of your bikes? And how do you open up an entirely new market to the public by rebalancing them on their own? In the eat space, how do we perfect courier pickup so that you don't actually have to wait at the restaurant while the food is cooking? Does the restaurant have car parking, bike parking? Which side of the building is the correct side to pick up on? How do you know that the Panda Express is actually inside of a giant mall? How do you navigate the courier from the parking lot into the correct location within that mall? Freight is also being reinvented from the ground up. How do you share shipping loads of shippers to carriers? How do you collect all of that shipping facility information in the world? Managing all of the tolls that they drive through in the US is about 18,000, by the way. It's a bit of a challenge, yeah? Our autonomous group, working to figure out cars for self-driving, which in itself is a whole separate world of mapping. How do you train the machine to recognize obstacles at speed in varying geographies? How do you surface the rider to a map in a self-driving car? Oh man, I've got to go faster than this. Okay, I'm going to skip some stuff and we're going to go to the flying car stuff. All right, Uber Elevate. This is some of the ATG work that we're doing. Uber Elevate is on an entirely another level, literally, like you're in the sky. How do you create multi-dimensional flying lanes in the air over a large metropolitan area? I have a bit of an idea, but that shit's super hard, super fun, and also something that no one's really figured out yet. All this is to even suggest that you need a physical representation of the map at all. At a point not too far in the distant future, you and your place within it will be augmented. I say that because I've seen it, and that shit's game-changing. What happens in a world where the void on the map is literally your reality? Imagine walking down the street, tapping hovering POIs that tell you menus, open close times, navigation, etc. This is why you see big data companies in our time investing in verified, granular place data. Megan, I apologize. Sometimes the cartographic void is no map at all. While the big data cartography of our era may look different, act different, and even consist of unfamiliar job titles, our industry is pushing ahead into a void that's exponentially growing. It's growing with spatial decisions needed to be made, designs created, and theories tested. While Washburn set out into the blanks on the map unsure of what to find and unsure of what he would need when he got there, yet he brought back a geographical vision and figured out how to bring it to life. The cartographic spaces that to me seem so incredibly far away from my world, the voids that I didn't even know existed, are one by one being flipped on their heads when I get there. It's taught me that cartography will manifest in ways that don't look like cartography, act like cartography, or in some ways are not traditional forms of cartography at all. That's it. I hope you look at tech companies in a little bit of a different light now. Appreciate it.